John Solomon, welcome to the program. How are you, sir?
Great to be with you, Glenn.
It's good to be with you. We are living in insane times. I remember we've talked for years now. Did you ever really believe that it would ever get like this?
I didn't know. I mean, we've had this great American experience for 246 years. And I think back to that speech you gave at CPAC in February. And I think all the things you said, somewhere along the way, we jumped out of the roots of this great country. And we're in a place now that doesn't resemble the America that we all grew up in. It's a very troubling time.
So I think a lot of people in the last couple of weeks have learned a lot about what to do and what to expect when you're served a warrant at your house. Yes. It's actually a good way. It's God's way of teaching us the Constitution, I think. What happened with Donald Trump is, again, I believe, a horror show. There's no way he's selling secrets, nuclear secrets to Finland. This is ridiculous. It does now seem to appear to be a shot across the bow because he was trying to release documents that showed who was involved in the Russia hoax. Is that true?
Well, listen, there is this long 6-year battle between the FBI and Donald Trump. And, of course, it starts with Russia collusion, which we now know was a completely contrived and political investigation that had no predicate, no merit whatsoever. As the presidency is coming to an end, as Donald Trump's leaving office on January 19, 2021, he declassifies the documents the FBI never wanted out in public. They didn't want these documents out. These are the way they handled their informants, what they knew before they signed the FISA warrants, what they were telling the court versus what they knew internally. That just inflamed the FBI all the more. And for the last year, as I've reported, the FBI secretly grabbed those documents. The president declassified them. He ordered them to be released. In the last hour of the Trump presidency, I'm told at 11 o'clock on January 20th, 2021, the FBI and the Justice Department grabbed those documents. They made up an excuse. Hey, we left a couple Privacy Act pieces of information in there from the declassified documents. Let's grab them. We'll fix that and we'll release them. They grabbed them.
Unbelievable.
Held on to them for 19 months. They've kept them from the American public despite a lawful order of a sitting president.
So he had the documents, but they hadn't been redacted?
They were redacted. They were completely ready. They had been declassified, all the declassified markings. At the last minute, the Justice Department raised an issue that maybe there was a piece of information there still covered by the Privacy Act. Let's go look at it real quickly. It looks like it was really just an excuse to grab the document.
Right. So now, did he have those at Mar-a-Lago? Do we know? Is that what they were going after?
Yeah. Not that we know of. No one has told me. I haven't found anyone who told me he had the documents there. And, of course, I've asked the president, do you have the documents? He's told me no. That's why he gave me permission as a journalist to go to the non-public section of the National Archives and try to find these documents. That's what led us to the discovery just 3 weeks ago that these documents had been grabbed by the Justice Department and a secret hand grabbed them and put them into the Justice Department.
So you haven't been able to find them?
No, we know where they are now. There's two sets. There's a classified set at the National Archives. I can't see those because I don't have a security clearance, nor does anyone else in normal America.
Burger.
Right. Exactly. I could have done the sock thing. That's probably not advisable.
Yeah.
And then the second part is there is a set at the Justice Department, and I'm taking multiple actions to try to force the Justice Department. And I hope to have some really good news later this week. I've been negotiating with the archives. They've been working with the Justice Department. I have a sense, an inkling that we might get these documents in the near future.
All right. So what was it that the FBI, do you think, was looking for?
It's a great question, right? The first possibility is maybe what they said is all that it is, right? This is a dispute between the archives and former President Donald Trump, and they actually went to this unprecedented means to go get documents back by raiding his home. I haven't found any other great explanation for people. And I think that when history looks back, if that's all this was, if this was a dispute over documents, there is a civil process that could have been followed. And that means they will have criminalized a dispute over paper and with some serious issues involved. And I think there's another part of this, Glenn, that we haven't been able to dig into. And I'm really working on it hard now. It is impossible for this sort of a dispute to go on and it become criminalized without the Biden White House knowing. There's just no way the system of government works. So what was the Biden White House's role in these conversations. I think that's the next big shoe to drop. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm determined to find out what it is, because the way government works, you've got these issues of privilege, you've got these issues of a dispute between the current administration and the past administration. The Biden White House had to be in the loop, and I don't think their story yet adds up.
I have to tell you, just on common sense and the way the world has traditionally worked in America, there's no way a decision that large that would come back to the White House eventually and affect the presidency, not just Biden and Trump, but the entire presidency. There's no way the Justice Department doesn't call and at least give a heads up. Am I wrong?
I'm 100% with you. And there's, I think, another issue here. Remember that the grand jury subpoena, which I broke the story a couple of weeks ago, was executed on June 3rd in a collaborative way, by the way. Both sides were still working together then. That didn't address the issue of executive privilege. What does that mean? It means somewhere earlier in the process, somebody had to waive executive privilege in order for a grand jury subpoena to be issued for presidential documents. The only Donald Trump isn't going to be waiving it. I think we're going to find out that the Biden administration waived executive privilege for Trump and that they were deeply involved in this. That just is the only plausible explanation for why there wouldn't have been a privilege claim back in June when the grand jury first showed, for the subpoena was first executed.
Wow. So, John, I'm doing a special on Wednesday on the history of the FBI and how corrupt it has been through. I mean, it really was corrupt from the very beginning. We had Hoover doing all kinds of stuff that was really, really dark and bad. Are we at or beyond the Hoover days?
Well, listen, one of the big stories I did when I was at the Washington Post, and I worked with 60 Minutes, for 40 years, the FBI would go into, let's take it out of politics for a second. They would go into a case and say, that guy on trial for murder, I can assure you that the bullets we found in his bedroom drawer matches the bullets that were shot out of that gun. And for 40 years, they testified that hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of murder defendants were convicted based on the FBI scientists. The story I broke in 2007 showed the FBI knew all along that science was junk science. It wasn't true, that they couldn't make such a representation, and yet they continued to do it well past they did during the Hoover years, well past all the way into the Mueller years. So the history of the FBI, whether it's the church hearings, which really went into the Hoover era, or what we've learned, 9/11, the mistakes in the Oklahoma City bombing, the problems with the FBI lab. This is an agency that has a very big reputation, but it also has a very big history of abuses, time and time and time again.
Any way to rein that in?
It's a great question. Some of the policymakers I've been talking to in Congress, for the first time, I've heard Republicans tell me privately, you know what, it's time to break up the FBI. Maybe make them like Scotland Yard and put the domestic intelligence into a different agency. There is clearly a moment of reckoning for the FBI on the immediate horizon. The real question is, if you just take the counterintelligence division out, you put it somewhere else, the mentality still exists if there's not a regard for the Constitution. And that's the part, whether it's inside the FBI or outside of it, the lack of regard for the Fourth Amendment, for our liberties in the face of a big government, that's the part that hasn't been crashed out. I'm not sure just dividing the FBI solves it.
Especially the intelligence arm. The intelligence agencies are completely out of control. The things I've read about the intelligence agencies, and I've heard from people on Capitol Hill, is they really don't answer to anybody right now.
Yep, they have their own mindset, their own mentality, they feel. And because so much of what they do can stay secret no matter what, as we're seeing in this search warrant today, we never get a visibility to know if what they're telling us, the excuse they're giving us, is real. And it's only years later, usually through lawsuits and FOIAs, that we find out, well, the official story of the intelligence community didn't match what we were told at the time. It's that secrecy that I think creates so much concern. There was an opportunity in the middle of Russia collusion, while Republicans were still in control of both, to do something, to create a permanent advocate so that all intelligence cases that occurred in secret, there would be someone advocating on behalf of the American whose liberties were about to be violated. they whiffed on that. Paul Ryan whiffed on that. Mitch McConnell whiffed on that. But I think there are a lot of people today that would go back and say, if I had a do-over, I'd probably create that public advocate who goes into the court and argues on behalf of you and me and everybody else.
So, John, what do you think Donald Trump is talking about when he says that, he said over the weekend, it might be within hours, it might be Monday, that I'm going to be filing something and big news coming. What do you think that might be?
My reporting indicates that the president is considering filing a motion to remove Magistrate Judge Bruce Reinhart, who, by the way, just a few minutes ago ruled that the entire affidavit cannot be kept sealed. He believes he used the word unprecedented. I'm glad he recognizes what he approved is unprecedented. But he is rejecting the Justice Department's request to keep the affidavit secret. But I believe the
Wait. He rejected the Department of Justice?
This just broke just a few minutes ago. It's up on Just the News right now. Judge Reinhart this morning said the Justice Department's request to keep the entire affidavit for the search warrant under seal is rejected, that this is an unprecedented case. It requires transparency so people can understand why the FBI was authorized to raid a former president's home. So that just happened this morning. That's something that the president was cheering on.
And how long will it be before we see that?
Well, there are two options. Either they have to deliver the unredacted version of the affidavit on Thursday, or a more likely scenario is the Justice Department will slow walk this, go to a district judge, then go to an appeals court, maybe even go to the Supreme Court.
Oh, my God.
My guess is they're going to go that route. But meanwhile, the president, to answer your question, I think the president is going to ask that a special master be appointed, a court-appointed independent person, take the documents from the FBI and go through them and say, these are privileged, these aren't, these are overly expensive, they shouldn't have been collected like your passports, and not leave the FBI on an honor system, given that all we know. So I think that's what we're going to see the president do.
That would be great. John, thank you so much.
Great to talk to you. It's always an honor to be on your show.
Likewise, thank you. What did you think about John Stossel and John Solomon and what he just said?
Pretty amazing. It does seem that the overreach is clear, and the courts may back up some of the Trump side of this, which is always a pleasant surprise, I suppose, when you go into this level of scrutiny. But I do think that there's a chance that this stuff really backfires on them. I think you've always had the right be the one who is defending the FBI and a lot of these institutions and say, like, look, we understand, and we've said this a million times, we understand that there are some problems in some of these institutions. They need to be rooted out. It seems like the right after this is getting to the point where they're just giving up on that. Like, we can't.
Hang on just a second. Would you call John Solomon back just a second and say, sorry, Glenn has one more question I forgot to ask him. I want to ask him about the whistleblowers, because he's in a position to know. Are we seeing more whistleblowers than usual? Because that's the feeling I get reading some stories and hearing from Congress, that FBI agents are coming forward and going, this has got to stop. And that, to me, is very heartening.
Yeah, and you're also hearing this from people you wouldn't normally. Was it Grassley that came out with a big list of was it 14 whistleblowers at least on this one story? That's not the typical. This isn't like, I don't know, a hardcore Trump ally. You know what I mean? He's just a normal kind of institutional Republican. He's been there for 500,000 years, and he's the type of guy you wouldn't necessarily think would be like making erratic claims about this type of thing.
No, he's kind of old school, reasonable, just consistent. Yeah. Just consistent. But he's been saying that, and if they're not, if you are in the FBI, I plead with you to have zero tolerance for anything unconstitutional and whistleblow. Come to us, come to Project Veritas, come to anyone, but please blow the whistle, because you're all going to be painted with the same brush. You know, what happened with the police in many cases, now this is not the case with, BLM, it just gave fuel to BLM, is for a long time, the police officers would close their ranks and they would protect their own. Mm-hmm. You can't. If there's a bad guy, you've got to rat them out. Otherwise, you're all going to be deemed bad. And I would like to be in a position where I trust the FBI. I don't know if I'll ever be there again. I don't know if I'll ever be there. And
that's probably a healthy thing. I mean, there should be some general skepticism.
Yes.
Many of our people more on the libertarian side of the right have pointed this out many times, that conservatives tend to have a real skepticism of government except for law enforcement and sometimes the military. And that's not always the best thing to do. You should have the skepticism of government on all of these facets. You just shouldn't wildly blame law enforcement for being wrong every single time. I want to be in a
neutral position.
Right. Judge things by the facts.
Right.
That's all we were asking here.
And the problem is, if the Intelligence and Justice Department have gone bad, who do you call? Because Ghostbusters out of business. I don't know if you know that. I don't know if you saw that.
No, they're all women now. Yeah, they're
that's a parallel universe.
Really?
No, yeah.
That didn't really happen?
No. The last I saw,
that's probably a better universe.
All the equipment was, buried in some place in the middle of the country.
Probably better than what actually happened.
Yeah. We need the trust in our institutions and our FBI. Please, if you're in the FBI, set the record straight and get rid of all of the bad things in your life and whistleblow. Back to John Solomon. John, I'm sorry to call you back, but
no problem.
I just needed one more question from you. We were talking about the FBI and the warrant and what happened to Donald Trump. I have been hearing from Congress that they're seeing tons of whistleblowers come forward, and that gives me kind of hope. You're in a position to know, are we seeing whistleblowers, and is it more than just one or two?
Yes, it is. That's a great question, and it's true. We've been writing a lot about it at Just the News. 14 separate Justice Department and FBI whistleblowers, including at least one in the very senior ranks, have come forward to either Congressman Jim Jordan in the House or Senator Chuck Grassley in the Senate. And their allegations are, as we were discussing earlier in the show, that there's this politicalization, particularly in the Washington field office where the current raid was conducted by, of cases. The two examples that Chuck Grassley has put out there that are very clear. An analyst wrote a document trying to take legitimate evidence against Hunter Biden and claim it was disinformation that caused a part of the Hunter Biden investigation to temporarily close down during the election. That's one example of a bad politicalization going on in the FBI, according to the whistleblowers. The other is the same office, the Washington field office, opened an investigation of Donald Trump, not the one we're talking about now, but an earlier one, without having a proper predicate, meaning there wasn't evidence, much like the case in Russia, to open it up. That's what these guys are talking about, these men and women who are coming forward, 14 of them. You're right on the money, Glenn.
Okay, so that's a good sign. We're seeing more than usual. It's not maybe just the political guys on the other side.
Yes, no, I think that's right. This is a greater heartburn among career people.
Good. Thank you for that. John, I appreciate it. God bless. John Solomon, of course, is the CEO and editor-in-chief of Just the News, which is a news site you should go to every day and check the news. That's good news. And again, I want to encourage anyone at any level, if you're seeing it in your city level, you're seeing it to the FBI level, the NSA, CIA, please whistleblow. We need to know good guys are in there. You've got the CDC doing things, and the FBI and the NSA. We've got to know that it's not everybody in there. There are good guys trying to get the word out.